Hey everybody. Hey David
Hey,
George.
how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well for a Wednesday morning.
Good. Happy to hear it. Well, thank you so much for joining and thank you everybody for joining. So David George is a marketer and he's a social good entrepreneur currently working at Mattel. So he helps brands and people understand the value of influencers, multicultural marketing, and digital storytelling. That said, not only does he work in influencer marketing at Mattel, he's also the founder of David George & Co., as well as the recent author of Black Boy Create. Super
Yes.
excited to be chatting with you today, David George, for the next
Likewise.
session. Yeah, so defining your brand identity with pride is the name of the session. To kick things off, I think it would be great to hear a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. Well, my fun fact is always that I started my professional career as a dancer. So that was a really good time. And honestly, I think I could think as far back to maybe about like 8 years old was when I discovered that like creativity was my thing. Like I just discovered I love to draw, I love to sing, I love to dance, and that was the dream. So I was very fortunate that I got to kind of experience that in the earlier times of my career. Um, 19 years old. I'm from Boston originally. And, Boston's a very beautiful city, very historic city, big on education, politics, things like that. But it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't the environment for somebody who had this kind of creative brain and really just wanted to figure out how to explore that. And it truly, to this day, I don't even think there's an industry there for creatives as much. So I left home at 19 years old, super, super young. Luckily, I was still in college, though. I went to St. John's University in Queens, New York. So I left home 19 years old, just got on a bus. I decided one day, I was like, you know what, if I want to be a dancer, if I want to go chase this dream, like I got to go get my feet wet. So got on the bus, got to New York, finished school. So I was training on the side kind of while I was in business school. And, Josh actually spoke this a little bit earlier, but, I got an agent and did some fun stuff, commercial print, TV, music videos. Like I literally was like, this is my dream. But just like sports, a career in dance, it's gonna, it's gonna end one day, right? And like I said, kind of my backup, I went to business school, studied some marketing. So I was like, you know what, like while I'm doing this, let me dibble and dabble and kind of explore that a little bit. Let me make sure that I'm not limiting myself to one path and really try enough things to know what it is that I truly want to kind of like pursue down the line. So that's kind of where marketing came in. After I graduated college, I was so broke. I was working part-time in sales at Gap, right? Just kind of like your everyday employee, sales associate. And I want to say about a year into that, on the hallway to like the break room, there used to be this job board that would kind of tell you about opportunities that were available within the company. And I came across one post that said, we're looking for someone passionate about social media. Literally, like that's what it said. It was a sign that said that. And I was like, huh, this was 2014. So social media was around, Instagram was around. We had Facebook, Twitter, all those awesome things. But I think that brands were still kind of figuring out like what their place or what their voice was on social. So I went to my manager and I was like, hey, I see this opportunity in the hallway on the bulletin board. Like, can you tell me more? He had no idea. He was like, oh, I'll connect you with the director one of these days and he can tell you about it. I kid you not. I want to say about a month went by of me asking and asking and asking about this opportunity. He just kept like forgetting, but I'm so like determined that one day I was at work and I saw the director in his office. So I just went and knocked on the door and I was like, hey, I'm David. I saw this opportunity. Like, can you tell me? To kind of speed that up a little bit, he basically told me that, Gap was really trying to figure out how to capture the millennial consumer. They felt like they were starting to lose a little bit to the Forever 21s and the Zaras who were doing like that, very like trendy fast fashion. And Gap's like, we have the same stuff and we're also better quality. Like, why won't they come here for their leather jackets or destroyed jeans? And I think one of the first things I realized, I was like, okay, it's in the marketing. It's how you're telling the story. At the end of the day, Gap is known to be this very all-American, classic, like safe basics brand. And at that time, we were getting so much more experimental with fashion. I think individuality was a big thing at that time. So people were mixing it up and I was like, let's mix it up. So he gave me a project I took home kind of over the weekend. And when I came back, he gave me the role on the spot. So I went from sales to literally like doing like, special projects and producing digital content. Mind you, like I didn't really have experience in it, but coming from a dance background, I interned at VH1. So I did know how to put together a production. So kind of from there, one thing led to another. I produced a lookbook. First, lookbooks were so in at that time, and being like a fashion blogger. So I grabbed some friends that I knew in the industry, sourced a photographer, and put together a lookbook shoot that they were really impressed by. So that led to another lookbook shoot, then a digital commercial that we shot. And that was when I made a decision that I was like, okay, I'm officially going to kind of move on from dance, because I think that this is showing me that my voice is in marketing. And I really want to explore kind of like what that can do for me. So I was at Gap for about 2 years. And then I saw that being a YouTuber, being an Instagrammer, like being a personal brand, let's put it that way, was rising in popularity as well. But everybody was moving over to LA. Everybody was in LA. So I was like, okay, that's my next step. And I think I really want to dive into that industry and figure out what that is. So when I got to LA, the first thing I did was I became an assistant to a YouTuber, just because I was like, let me learn first before I kind of step out and say that I like know this space. So I became an assistant to a YouTuber, learned so much about just how brands were starting to partner with those creators. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what I want to be doing. So that led to me moving into multicultural marketing in TV and film. And then last fall, Mattel reached out about an opportunity, and here we are. That's the short version.
Amazing. So one of my favorite quotes that you just said, I was in dance, so I knew how to pull off a production. Amazing. But it does seem like you evolved so much in your journey and were able to learn so much on the way. So I think that is amazing to hear. So you're at Mattel now, working on the Barbie brand. So I think a lot of us definitely played with Barbies growing up. I can see how Barbie has changed and evolved, but I guess I'd love to hear from you to hear how that transformation kind of came to be and where Barbie is today.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's crazy because one, I never ever thought I would be working at Mattel Barbie. Like Barbie is such an iconic brand, like truly, and a part of everybody's household. And I think the biggest thing that inspired me about even taking the opportunity is Mattel is one of those companies where like they don't just say stuff, right? Like they truly are committed to making sure that their product selection, reflects the world that we're in, right? Barbie's literally in every household, every toy box. It only makes sense. And I think separate from the pressures of just like multiculturals moving to become the majority, people are pushing back. They're holding brands accountable. They're saying, why doesn't this product reflect me? Separate from that pressure, I just truly think that they want to be a leader and a change in the industry. So as far as how Barbie's evolved, oh my gosh, we all know blonde hair, blue-eyed Barbie, kind of the originator, right? But now when you look at just the product line in general, Barbie has over 35 skin tones, like 94 hairstyles, right? Like that's something to mention. 94 hairstyles represent everyone's look and different types of hair, 9 different body types. She has a variety of careers. Like they've truly put so much time, like research and attention into developing products that, again, just make sure that kids, because that's who we kind of target the most, make sure that kids see themselves, right? And I think that especially with in the younger ages, right? We have the Dream Gap, which basically is on a mission to create awareness around the fact that young girls by the age of 5 start to develop those self-esteem issues, start to question their place in the world, because there weren't for a long time many products that empowered them to know what they could be, right? That's Barbie's model. You can be anything. So that's like scratching the surface of how far Barbie has come. But I think that I'm really proud to be a part of this team. Yes, Mike. I'm so proud to be a part of this team and just kind of where we're going. And you're starting to see it more in the content. The products are getting better and better and better. So it's just been an awesome thing to experience.
Definitely. And it's so cool to hear just how much variety and inclusion that there is overall. I mean, it's so great that young people are able to have a Barbie that looks more like them. I think that's great. Since the topic is obviously brand identity and defining your brand identity with pride, are you able to share a bit more about Barbie and how it incorporates inclusion and acceptance into its brand identity?
Yeah, so I guess I started to kind of touch on this a little bit earlier, but like Mattel puts their money where their mouth is. And I think that they're not afraid to address it, right? The fact that there is lack of diversity in a lot of industries. There is lack of representation in a lot of industries. They're not afraid to say it, right? I think that's the big thing with some brands where it's like, let's not even touch that, right? Like they're not afraid to say it. And I think that they also know that they don't know everything, right? So it was like Vanessa kind of said earlier, right? We really lean on internally, diverse employees to be consultants, right? But also externally, we bring in consultants from all different types of communities to share what they know and to share with us and to open our eyes to kind of truly where we need to be as a company and as a brand, I would say. So one, just something that personally means a lot to me. They've definitely stepped up and just committed to representation in product, content, in the people for diverse communities. So across LGBTQ plus community, obviously, there's a big commitment to the Black community. And then also to partnerships. I think that's the big thing. And they really rely on partnership, people who have been doing this work for a long time, who can really stretch the dollars, right? They definitely put money up. That's why I say put their money where their mouth is. So right now, just to kind of list off a couple quick things, right? So for Pride Month specifically, we have a partnership with GLSEN, which is GLSEN. And they are an organization that they really work to assure that LGBTQ plus youth are able to like learn in environments that are free of bullying and harassment. That's a big issue. Mental health is a big issue within this community. Suicide rates is a big issue within this community. So we felt like they were the perfect partner to really help us, put those resources out there. As far as the Black community, oh my gosh, I mentioned the Dream Gap already, but they've pledged $250,000 to NAACP youth programs, right? So again, really leaning on partnerships, but I think outside of that, the product itself, I've already kind of listed off the stats as far as how much they've made it inclusive, how much they've really expanded representation in the product line, but also in content, right? So Barbie herself she's a vlogger on YouTube, and she's not afraid to go there. She sits down and she has conversations about racism, prejudices, about differences. Monster High, which is a part of the bigger dolls portfolio, is a rebrand, a relaunch that I'm super proud of, that's going to be in the fall. And Monster High, like that brand is all about celebrating individuality, the power of groups, celebrating differences, and just really making like being other or being different normal, right? I think that's the big mission right now, where it's like, I think everybody who fits in one of those categories or a different community is tired of feeling like an other, right? Like, how do we continue to like put out different stories that just kind of make this all normal? Does that make sense? So
yeah,
Mattel's doing a lot, but they have just a great initiative, Mix Up the Toy Box. We're just very, very intentional about that.
amazing. Laverne Cox would love to talk about that, Barbie. That was so exciting to see. Fabulous outfits, of course. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about that Barbie and how it was to launch her.
Yeah, so Laverne just celebrated a 50th birthday, which was news to me. And yes, so Laverne Cox's doll is actually the latest like signature collection doll. And yes, as you mentioned, she's in this beautiful gown. And just in general, right, I think that this was the perfect person to cement, and not say cement, but induct into that collection of Barbies, right, and be a story that we represent, because it's just time. And I think that right now, especially trans Black women just need more empowerment, need more platforms. I think that she's the perfect person to spearhead that, right? She's everything that Barbie is. She's iconic. She's led the way in fashion, TV, film, the LGBT community as a whole, LGBTQ plus community as a whole. So she was the perfect person, I think, to kind of kick this month off with. Launching it though, I think that with everything, you have kind of good feedback and negative feedback, just depending on where people are at, you know what I'm saying? But for us, again, the brand is super proud of this release. The doll is doing very, very well. Laverne Cox was very happy. Yes, she was very, very happy with kind of what the brand created, and it's been an awesome journey so far.
Amazing. So amazing. Obviously you do have a lot of brand and marketing experience under your belt now. I guess, in your opinion, what other brands are doing a really good job embodying that inclusion and acceptance in their brand identity?
Well, okay, inclusion as a whole, I love how Nike tells stories, right? I think they're probably one of my favorite brands. And if I ever went anywhere after Mattel, that's probably where I would try to go. I'm a big storyteller, and making sure that when you're putting your message out there, that like that people on the receiving end hear the story that they need to hear to motivate them and to get them to do something, to act, right? So I think most people, we all know Nike Just Do It, right? But I don't know if we've ever really broke down like, what is Just Do It even mean, and why is that a check, right? And it's like, think about how good you feel when you just said, you know what, tomorrow morning I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do that workout, and then you actually do it, right? Like when you follow through on yourself, that does so much for your self-image, right? So anyways, reeling back in, Nike's one of my favorite storytellers ever. I think they do a great job at making everybody feel like they can be great. Because I think that's a big thing too. Sometimes I come across people who feel like success or opportunities or this or that are only reserved for certain people. I think that Nike does a great job at saying we all can be great if we work hard at it. So they're one. I would also say P&G. I think Vanessa spoke to that earlier. They create great content that just helps people think. I think that's what content needs to do. There's so much content out these days. I think that content needs to be more purpose-driven, thought-provoking, and make people truly question why it is that they believe a certain story or however it is that they view the world. And I guess the last one, I'm just to not ramble too much on this topic, I'm gonna go with Logitech. Logitech, I'm really impressed with lately. I think that their initiatives for BIPOC creators, the way that they've been expanding themselves to make sure that they're not just some like boring tech brand that people go and buy mouse and keyboards from, but they're really working hard. I can tell based on like their latest campaigns, they're working hard to make sure that they build emotional connections with their audience. And their campaigns lately with how they've just been uplifting creators, diverse creators, and just showing what's like the power of what's possible today is truly inspiring. So those would be the top three I would say right now.
No, I think that was great. And obviously we are in Pride Month, but these topics are so important any time of the year. It sounds like, in your opinion, a lot of these authentic connections and personal stories are what brands should be kind of hitting on when making these connections with their audiences. Is there anything else that you think brands should be thinking about to be more inclusive, even beyond Pride Month?
Oh man, not to be too repetitive, because I think Vanessa did a beautiful job addressing this, but I think that brands just need to tell diverse stories all the time, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Like me personally, something I love to do, because it's like, I'll say this before I go into what I was gonna say. In my journey as a marketer, right, I've noticed that my voice is really, really leaned on when I'm marketing to Black people, right? But I also have responsibilities to where I do develop campaigns for what we call general market as well, right? And I think something I've challenged my team to do and to think about more recently was to round out their knowledge of what's going on in every community, right? The same way I have to know what's going on in every community and not just mine, right? I challenge you to do the same thing. So I personally, I love to tune into seminars like this. I love to go to events. I love to just go sit and listen in, whether it's women, whether it is the LGBTQ plus community, whether it's AAPI, like whatever it is, there's people with disabilities. I love to sit in on different conversations and truly hear what is that they care about, what is their actual agenda, right? And what is the change that they want to see versus me assuming what it is that they want. I think that's the biggest, where brands make the biggest mistake, is by assuming, right? Oh, this is what this community cares about, where it's like, well, did anybody actually listen or go ask someone, right? So I think just telling brand stories all the time and not just, yes, Pride Month, like we have it, let's celebrate, let's be loud, let's be proud. But if we can find ways to make sure that these communities, people from different communities understand that like we want to be a part of their life, we want to tell their stories, we want them to be included and a part of our brand, and figure out a way to do that seamlessly all the time, I think that's the biggest way. Because right now, I can tell you right now, people are kind of over the, oh, this is our week, this is our month, this is our day, and everybody kind of moves on. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
The listening piece, I feel like, is
Yeah.
huge, huge, huge. Great. Well, let's go back to you. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. What are you most looking forward to this Pride Month? Have you done anything fun to celebrate yet? What are your plans for the rest of June?
Oh man, so I just celebrated a birthday, my 32nd birthday. And my two closest friends, actually, I've known since I was 15, 16 years old. So as you can imagine, we've been through everything together. So I got a house out in Calabasas that we spent the entire weekend together. And like, we all live in different places now, right? Like one's in New York, I'm here, the other's in Long Beach. So it's, you know how it is when you get older, it's hard to kind of bring everybody back together. So our birthdays are always that moment we can come together, reflect, bond, and just think about the fact that like we were 15-year-old kids in the middle of Boston, you know what I'm saying? Now like grown, mature, like in our own respective careers and just doing like awesome things. And then we're all proud Black gay men. So that was the most exciting thing so far. As far as other plans, yes, my eyes are definitely still open for just other, again, conversations I can be a part of or events that I can go to. It is on top of my goal list to get more connected to the community. I can honestly say that I have not been. So that's a big thing. But as far as what I'm most proud of is my new book. I just wrote a new book called Black Boy Create, and oh my God, I announced the pre-order 2 weeks ago. It comes out June 28th, and the response has just been so overwhelming. You know, at my core, I'm very, very passionate about speaking to the little me, the kid who's 14 years old, and you know that your dreams are bigger than the environment that you're in, but you just don't quite either have the family who knows how to kind of guide that, or people that knows how to guide that, and you yourself don't know kind of what to do. So I wrote it to really, empower Black and brown boys to pursue creative paths, right? I heard it earlier today in another conversation that like so many people of color, and I'm gonna speak to boys specifically, because in my experience as a marketer, whenever I'm in different offices, there's maybe one other Black guy, maybe, you know what I'm saying? And it's been so long that I've seen this that I'm like, okay, there's clearly like a lack of awareness here. Something's wrong here. And as I dove deeper and as I was writing the book and reflecting on my own experiences and doing research and talking to different friends, I'm like, people just don't know the opportunities that are truly available in creative industries. And I think that right now, being a content creator, being an influencer, being someone who just loves to create anything, this is the time right now to really lean into that and to step into that and to see where it can take you. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm probably most excited about right now.
First of all, congratulations. What an amazing feat to be an author, to write a book. That is great. I guess like, can you share with us a little bit more about the type of advice that you include in that book?
Yeah. So I think at the core of it, right, Black youth in particular are kind of like one of the many, I'm not gonna say we're the only, one of the many groups of people who gets kind of told all these things about ourselves before we're allowed to discover it, right? So like I said, like this book was really written to empower kids of color, youth of color as a whole, but I'm speaking to boys just because like that's just a place in my heart where I want to start, but to empower them to just tell themselves a different story. I actually have the book here. I don't know if you can see, it might get washed out, but the model is tell yourself a different story, because sometimes youth, right? Like they're spending 7 to 9 hours a day on social media. Now you can imagine all the videos, all the news, all the different stories they're hearing about who they are. But sometimes when you ask people, what truly is your challenge? What truly is in your way, right? They haven't even thought about it, or they don't even know. So half the time it's just self-limiting beliefs or things that we've consumed that tell us what's possible and what's not, right? So in the book, kind of the beginning chapters really focus on my own personal stories and in my own journey to how I discovered that I was a creative kid, right? I used to like write letters to Nickelodeon because I wanted to be a Nickelodeon, all that so bad. I discovered it, right? And thankfully I had teachers and guidance counselors and people that did notice that like, that's when I lit up. That's when I felt I had the most energy. That's when I was the most well-behaved, or right, felt like I wanted to show up, was when I had opportunities to be creative and express myself that way. So again, when I was younger, it was dance, it was art, it was a visual art, drawing, right? Like they always found ways to try to like put that in front of me. So I share a lot about that journey and just what made me so curious to like decide, you know what, like I'm gonna leave Boston. I'm gonna go out into the world and I'm gonna figure that out, being a dancer, going to Gap, now at Mattel. So I talk a lot about what that journey looked like because it was a mess. It was crazy, it was a mess, it wasn't a straight line. And I think I want people to get from it is a mindset, and understanding that it's not going to be perfect, and understanding that resilience truly is like a superpower. Being creative truly is a superpower if you just stay the course, stay focused, but also practice self-awareness. So that's a big chunk of the first half. The second half, we really dive into examples, stories, right? The one thing I always ask people if they ever come to me, if someone's younger, high school, college, and they come to me for advice, I go, well, who are you following? Who are you studying? Who's the one person that's dove into a career or laid a path that you most want to be like? If they don't have an answer, like that's the first step, right? So I actually created 7 original characters who have success stories that are inspired by real Black boys and men that I admire out in this generation. And I tell them kind of like, step 1, how did they discover what their passion was, or their creativity, or what their art was? 2, how did they apply it? How did they go out into the world and actually make something and do something, right? Because you can have a vision, you can have a dream all you want, right? But without actual work, doesn't matter. So those characters I think are going to be really, really fun for different Black boys that are reading it to say, oh my God, I identify with this person, I identify with that person, right? And here's how I can just take my first step, right? It's not about being perfect or knowing all the answers, but how do you take your first step? Then the third half of the book, the ending, I go into the business of it all, right? How does being creative become a career? How does being creative translate into social media, being a content creator, an influencer? Right? I work in digital partnerships. What is a digital partnership? How do brands look for these people? What are they looking for, right? And what does a brand consider to be a good fit or successful? What's gonna make their campaign successful? All the ins and outs, because you also have, I'm sure you heard of the Black creator strike that happened not too long ago. You have all these different things because Black creators, right, especially Black boys, are some of the most innovative people out there, right? But sometimes they don't quite always know how to shape what they're doing to make sure that they can live off of it, right? I think for a very long time, it's been hard to define the path for a creative person until now. For a long time, I grew up being told, people who go to college usually go to be like doctors, lawyers, right? Like, you want to go be a dancer? Like, I don't quite get that, right? So for a long time, creative people have been told, you can't make money doing that. You can't make a living doing that. Black Boy Create tells you otherwise. So that was a little bit long, but that's the gist of what people are going to get from it.
No, that's amazing. And that creativity kind of aspect is so weaved into all of that. I guess, what advice do you have for people who are in a creative rut or who kind of experience some of these downfalls on their path and on their journey to success?
Yeah. This is where the strategist in me kind of comes out, but I think I'm a big advocate of first off, I think working your hardest to get rid of fears, right? Because I think more than half of the time, like, that's a story you're telling yourself, right? I'm going to go back to that kind of all the time. That's a story you're telling yourself. Whatever you're afraid that someone's going to think, or what this is going to look like, or when you're trying to be perfect too much, you basically almost end up doing nothing half the time, right? So work your hardest to like really build your mental toughness and get rid of fears, right? Because I think it's that in life that holds people back more than the fact that the opportunity wasn't for them or the opportunity wasn't available. So I would say that's my biggest thing. The second thing I would say is practice reflection, like literally, like quarterly might be a lot. That's what I do. But the end of the year, like really spend time. Like, I journal. I have a collection of journals. I love journals. Spend some time really talking about like your where you're at, right? Like, what did you set out to do this year? Where did you end up? What worked? What didn't? And when you have that data, right, when you actually kind of look at how did I apply myself? What did I do? What did I read? What actually worked? What didn't? It kind of helps lay out that path for you, right? Because now you're looking at all those reflections and you're like, okay, well, if this is working, it was kind of like my experience with going from dancer to a marketer, right? When I was a dancer, sure, like I've done some really, really fun things. I really did, but I'm a little on the short side. That wasn't really preferential for guys in the industry, right? I was typically always getting cast to be the token Black kid, right? I was doing really, really commercial opportunities, but what inspired me to become a dancer was like Britney Spears, Aaliyah, Missy Elliott, like the art, Michael Jackson, like those projects back in the day. The industry's not that anymore, right? But when I became a marketer, especially at Gap, like I actually had people listening to my thoughts and opinions and wanting to know what I thought, and just the power that I felt like seeing an idea become real. Whenever I would direct a project, I was like, oh my God, like I'd be silly to not pay attention to what this is showing me. You know what I'm saying? So reflect, like write stuff down, really track. I think that's the best way to kind of put it, to conclude that the answer to this question, like really track what you're doing and be self-aware enough to know what's working and what's not working. And the rest will honestly figure itself out.
Amazing. Yeah. And I have heard that Mattel has been very supportive of your book. Can you talk a bit about that as well?
Oh my God, they have. So I'm sure that everybody listening can identify with that fear you have of like, do I want my employer to know kind of like what I'm up to outside of work? Are they going to think I'm distracted? Are they going to, whatever, right? Those go through your head. So that was me at first, right? But then I was talking to the head of our division one day and I was like, yeah, and I just put out a book, like kind of nonchalant, kind of slid it under the table. And she was like, what? Right? So they've been so supportive because Mattel, they empower employees to make sure they find a passion outside of work, right? That's what's gonna like empower you, but also like help you look forward to getting up in the morning, help you look forward to your weekend, help you look forward to what you're doing after work, right? So they truly empower that. And we have this internal newsletter that goes out every week. So they did one on me, did like a little highlight of just kind of like what I'm up to. It's called like, you highlight like what are you up to outside of work. They allowed me to kind of like spotlight the book and kind of and I got so much great feedback from like senior executives, my peers. Like it's been positively overwhelming because again, I think there's a stigma that like companies are not really going to support what you're doing outside of work, but it's been unbelievable. It's really been unbelievable.
Yeah, I feel like that support is so important and it just keeps you going and challenges you to even find new things and new inspirations in your everyday. So I guess, first of all, are you still dancing on the side? Is that one way that you stay creative?
I'm not.
Oh, but is there, I guess, what's next for you? What are your hopes
Yeah.
for the next year? What's next on the horizon?
Yeah, so I think right now, like all of my focus and energy has obviously been going into this book project, right? And just making sure that I have like the best release possible. But I think from there, I really want to do more speaking. I think that it's important that like, someone who's come, so far, there's obviously still more to go, but someone who's come so far, I'm at that phase where like it's in me to want to go back into my community, go into different schools, go into organizations, and one, be representation, be a face to what's possible, right? But also two, I truly want to teach that process of like discover, plan, create. Discover, plan, create. So I'm building a curriculum that actually goes with the book that I'm going to take into those organizations to teach kids like how to find their thing, or at least what they think it is right now. It can change down the line, but how do you discover who you are, whether you are a creative person? Are you great with making images and videos? Are you great with writing? Are you great with speaking, right? Like, how do you figure out, like, what are those things that you just spend? I ask people all the time, I go, when they're having a hard time figuring out kind of like, what to pursue, I'm like, when you wake up on a regular day, like, what do you find that you spend the most of your free time doing? Nobody has to ask you, nobody has to force you, right? Like, what do you find that you spend most of your free time doing? Is it something that you're watching? Do you love to go running? Like, those are the things that you should be paying attention to when it comes to how you want to build a life and a career, right? So I think that's the first thing, like just discovering like what is it that you're going to naturally do, and not, because I think what's happening right now in the creator space or the influencer space that I'm in is people are seeing, oh, okay, get ready with me videos are trending, I'm going to do that, even though like I've never been a fashion person. You know what I'm saying? So I really want to strip people back to like, no, at the core of you, who are you naturally, right? Then I think plan. I think that sometimes we can be in this phase where it's like, oh, just like manifest, right? Just manifest and wish it and dream it. But no, there's actually power to planning things out, really deciding kind of how you want things to happen, really identifying what's the steps you need to take to do it, who are the people you need to talk to, right? And then you got to create, right? You got to make, you got to create, you got to put stuff out there. Otherwise, like the world won't be able to find you. So I'm developing that curriculum that I want to take into schools in the fall. And I probably think that's going to be like my big focus for like the next year.
That is impressive and amazing and so important, because I feel like with social, we have such a great opportunity to be who we want, to put our best face forward, kind of put those passions out there. And I mean, working at Influential, working with so many different types of brands who are looking for very specific influencers, often there's kind of an opportunity for everybody to kind of showcase their passions.
Absolutely.
So I know we've talked about a lot, but wanted to kind of open up the floor if there's anything else that you wanted to discuss today.
Oh man, I guess not to like flip the tables, but I'm curious to know like what are you most excited about this year when it comes to just one, I think the attention I guess I don't want to act like it's like brand new, but when it comes to recognizing the LGBTQ plus community, when it comes to the rise of representation as far as diverse communities, like what's kind of been a project or a campaign that you worked on that you feel that you've been excited about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I think it's so amazing that we kind of have this floor, that we have the opportunity to celebrate these communities, to celebrate LGBTQ, to have the avenues for diverse creators. And again, like niche passions that people are excited about.
Yeah.
I think it's great to be a part of this and to have the opportunity to speak to you, to learn from you. I think it's been great to listen in today and to hear from different voices, because I'm always learning and I can always improve and kind of tailor my experience, and hopefully I'll help others with my experiences as well. So I guess in the coming year and in my experience, I'm just excited to listen more and to learn more, because I feel like that is just so important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing that you just kind of spoke on is niche spaces, because again, I can drive this point home all day, but I always just want to empower people to like, again, find those niche spaces. It's not really today, there was a time I would say where there were tons of gatekeepers and you had to do what worked, right? Or at least what they told us worked. But I think now, if you love coffee, if you love books, if you love headbands, right? Like anyone can have a voice, tell a story, and build, I always say like build a personal brand, but build a personal brand around their talent, their interests, their passions. So I think it's such a beautiful thing. And TikTok changed the game, I would think now, as far as like algorithms being more interest focused, if that makes sense, right? I think that's why it blew up so fast, because it was like when you're on other platforms, right, you kind of just get served everything, right? But when you're on TikTok, it's like, oh, we noticed that like you always kind of stop and you look at posts with cats. So guess what? We're gonna show you cats. And I think that like, oh my God, it's just exploded and just put the power of being a creator in everybody's hands. And I feel like every year I always be like, all right, this is as good as it's gonna get. This is as good as it's gonna get. But every year, like there's a new level that gets unlocked with like, just again, what's possible to be a creator. Like I'm so excited about like where this industry is going.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like celebrating the everyday, I feel like the day-to-day kind of maybe more mundane activities that kind of build that camaraderie and that inclusion and acceptance, just by showcasing, hey, like we're similar in all of these ways. Like let's kind of showcase what I'm doing. And I think there's such a value in just being your authentic self on social. I feel like that is what gets celebrated these days, which makes me excited.
Yeah.
I know the content that is most authentic to influencers is the content that performs best. Like the scripted stuff never does as well as the kind of more off the cuff, more personal stories. So it's really great to actually see that type of content and those types of creators being celebrated.
Absolutely. That actually reminds me, I guess something that we can maybe open up a little bit more is one, like brand identity, right? Brand identity, like why we're here, right? And what you said just kind of triggered it for me. But I think authenticity, right? And I guess to kind of break down, like people are always like, what does that mean though? What is that? We always say that, be authentic, be authentic. And I think for me, authenticity is 3 pillars, right? It's people, product, and content, right? I think at the end of, I'll say people, your message, and your content, and there being an alignment in that, right? Because I think a lot of the times what used to happen, and we spoke about it a tad bit earlier, is Pride Month, yay, rainbows, and then like nothing, right? But I think now people require so much, the consumer requires so much more transparency with brands and saying, okay, your message is saying this, but what do the people here look like, right? Are you as diverse, like actually as you're saying? Are you guys as inclusive actually as you're saying? And they require that transparency, you know what I'm saying? Which is why you're starting to see more, I guess I would say brands kind of encouraging, and I think this is a big Gary Vaynerchuk thing, Vanessa there, encouraging companies to help their employees build personal brands, right? So it's like, even like me being here today, it's like, no, I'm a very proud Mattel employee, but I have my own things going on. And I think that I found that kind of intersection. But my point is, there needs to be an alignment, right? So you have a message. Does that align with the people that make up your company? Does that align with the product that your company produces, right? I think that's a big thing. And then is it represented in the actual content, right? Content's a big thing. I feel like no brand can escape building content now, whereas you used to be able to just kind of put out a product and kind of move on. But now it's like you're expected to have a product, to have a digital identity as well. And I think a lot of brands are kind of still figuring out like, what is our media? What is our content, right? Because we can't all make movies or music videos or well, we all make commercials, but you get my point, right? So yeah. I think that would probably be the top 3 pillars that I would say shapes a brand identity and really helps that authenticity come through. Curious to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think the only additional point I would add is brands who actually are listening. So yes. Scanning social, understanding what their consumers are looking for, and actually produce content and share messages kind of in relation to that is so important. You talked so much about the importance of listening. And I feel like when brands also embody that, everything is just more successful, because then we're really honing in on what people need to hear and want to understand and what they're passionate and interested in, and taking that further.
100%. And I think when I think about that a little bit larger, I remember when I came into Mattel, back in September, that's when we were kind of getting the ball rolling on what's going to be our Black History Month initiative. And I remember when I reviewed the plans, like, I'm new, by the way, so I shouldn't have had this much confidence. but again, this is why I say drop those fears, because you never know when what you can bring to the table can make a change. So I remember I reviewed the plans, and I went into a meeting one day, and I was like, listen, here's the top agenda of the Black community, right? Like, we can't just check the one representation box, right? And have like, oh, we have Black dolls, right? We know that, cool. What do we do beyond that, right? Kind of like you asked me earlier about how do we go beyond pride? What do we do beyond that, right? Black people really show up, and we care about people who show an interest in our culture and our community. How do we add that as a pillar, right? How do we make sure that we are meeting the agenda of education, access, and opportunity? How do we add that as a pillar? So instead of it being this one thing, right, where it was like, cool, aspiring women, Ida B. Wells, we added to the collection of Black dolls and role models. Then we built a TikTok piece where we, Brooklyn, who's like, there's 2 Barbies now, Brooklyn, Malibu. So Brooklyn's now the second lead, the Black lead. So she invited different creators to a virtual block party, and they got to bring different dishes, right, that had like cultural ties to their families and historic roots, which was, so we did a blogger episode on Brooklyn and her dad cooking Black eyed peas, which is the recipe of their family. And this video ended up being the top performing video on the TikTok page, 2 million views in like a couple days. And it was amazing. So now we're seeing that same success right now with our Pride content. So same thing. We did a video with Malibu, and she's inviting different like LGBTQ members, well, people of the community, to share their stories, whatever that may be, right? And that video, same thing, blew up. I think it's probably approaching 3 million views now. So people truly can tell when you're being authentic, when you're listening, and when you truly want to be a part of their story and their community versus just doing something performative to kind of like celebrate the month and then move on.
I love that. I love that those connections are spanning so far beyond just this month, because that's so important. Absolutely. So it's great to hear all the work that Barbie is doing. I'm excited by it.
Oh, even the comments. I think the comments are your best friend, especially in this digital first age. Like, read the comments. That's the best way to like listen, right? Social listening, right? It's like people were like, oh my God, like you guys are doing more than, I don't want to bash anybody, but you guys are doing so much, celebrate this community and that community, and right. And it's like people truly listen and they appreciate it. And when we read the comments, it was like so moving to know that like you were a part of that. And I know that like why representation is important, right? I think sometimes people feel like, why do we have to keep giving all these different groups and communities all this special attention, right? It's important because there's somebody out there telling themselves they don't belong here.
Exactly.
They're telling themselves that like they can't because, well, you know what I mean? I think we asked somebody earlier, I think Easy asked Josh earlier about like how he kind of navigated like being an athlete and also being a part of the LGBT plus community, which is something that so many people are still dealing with, and they feel like they don't know what they're going to lose by being themselves, right? But being yourself, I'm such a champion for self-acceptance. Being yourself is probably one of the most freeing experiences like in the world. Like removing that barrier from like hiding something or not being yourself, you can only keep that up for so long, first of all. But breaking that barrier has allowed me to like move through the world in the most freest way possible. Like I honestly can't even explain it. I can't. I just try.
Amazing. It's amazing. And it's amazing to have these opportunities now to be yourself and to show your true self to the world. I think it's great. And have brands who value that and who are able to take those messages further to a wider audience. That's so, so important.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. This was a great conversation, David and Maggie. Like, I really appreciate the perspective that you guys brought, and I can't glance over it. Happy belated birthday to you. I too am a June Gemini, so I absolutely love it. I feel like we're the most creative, but I could be a little bit biased, so I don't want to, go that direction. But this was extremely impactful, definitely for me, and I'm pretty sure so many other people as I'm seeing the comments coming through the chat. So I really appreciate your time, David and Maggie.